at the Big Gouda on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube under the name Doug Shane. When you're there, please make sure to like, share, subscribe. Click the notification icon so you know when we're posting videos and when we're going live. We go live every Friday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, every Sunday morning, 11:30 Eastern, getting you ready for the NFL slate. Also posted a video last night. Late last night, I decided to post a NFL cash game strategy article on general cash game strategy. We post those all the time. When you click that notification icon, lets us know that you're, or lets you know when we're posting. Also, you can come find us at banksterdfs.com/subscribe. $3.99 a week gets you access to all of our content, major sports, college sports, niche sports, and geez, you know, we got NBA starting this Friday, preseason NBA starting this Friday. We got a great NBA team, Justin, Amy, Stephen, Trosh. We're going to be adding some people to that as well. You're going to have full coverage for NBA coming. And, of course, you got your NFL and all the other major sports, college sports. Brandon Matthews killing it with college basketball and EuroLeague. Troy Rapson killing it with college football. We got Jeff Kaminsky coming with 3 different types of soccer. He has English Premier League. He's got the Champions League, Bundesliga. I mean, it's ridiculous. We've got Brian Crozier and Justin Amy doing PGA for us. And then Tay Wagner. I got to give a special shout out to Tay Wagner, man. Tay comes out every single week with his MMA article, The Punch List, and he is crushing it every week since this pandemic has started. He has just been researching like a fiend. He's a quiet dude. He's not like, you're going to find him mostly in the MMA room in our Slack chat. But his articles and his advice alone is worth the $3.99 a week. And you get that and everything we do for that $3.99 a week at banksterdfs.com. That's a long promo. I'm done with promoing for right now. I'm going to throw it over to Gouda. Gouda, how you doing today? Where are we at this week? What is the big news that we need to talk about on your mind? What's the first thing we're looking at this week?
I'm doing well. I'm ready to go. I guess the big news for today's slate, there wasn't much injury stuff that we were watching or that was even popping this week. So I guess the big thing is with Miami that Tua is getting the start, which downgrades Devontae Parker. If we look at the games that Tua has started, he hasn't thrown more than 28 times, even, in a game that they put up 34 points against the Cardinals. And, the games that Tua has started, we look at Devontae Parker, who I think is the big downgrade. Against Denver, he went 6 for 61 on 9 targets. He did pull in a touchdown, but still only 6 catches on the 9 targets. Against the Chargers, he did have 7 targets, but he went 2 for 31. Again, in that Arizona game, as I had mentioned, 7 targets, 6 catches, 64 yards. And then the Rams game, which they pretty much controlled because of the defense, they didn't need to do much. He only had 2 targets. He had 1 catch for 3 yards, even though it was a touchdown. He gave you nothing that week. And now with them playing the Bengals, it is a good chance it plays out like that Rams game did, where it's defense, there's not much happening, and Parker doesn't do much. So I'm pretty much 100% off of Parker this week. I may have him sprinkled in on 1 or 2 lineups just because he is talented and it is a great matchup. But I just don't have him considering a smash spot where I'm owning him 30% across my lineups. And the other news there with Miami is Myles Gaskin. He's going to be active today, and he's essentially one of the only running backs active for Miami this week.
I think it's just him and Laird this week, if I'm not mistaken. It's just him and Laird.
Yeah, and also let's see if there's news on Malcolm Perry, because Malcolm Perry was a guy I talked about a little bit. I mean, there's no official announcement on him yet, but even so, I mean, Malcolm Perry is just more of a depth guy than anything else. I don't think he takes away Gaskin carries or anything. So I think Gaskin becomes a good play, but I do have 2 reservations.
Malcolm Perry is out today, by the way.
He's out.
On that. So it's literally just Gaskin and Laird plus a fullback, and then Lynn Bowden is active. But I think Gaskin would just carry the load here.
Yeah. So that Perry being inactive actually takes away a little bit of a concern, because it was more of a concern that if the game gets out of hand or the Dolphins pull away or control it rather early, that maybe they don't give Gaskin as many touches and they mix in Laird and Perry. So maybe that takes away a little bit of the concern there. But, also, too, I was actually talking about this with Hook last night, And you've seen throughout the season that the guys that have been designated to return from IR that are only on the 3-week IR, and it's nothing too major of an injury, they have, when guys have been designated to return, they're back, they're ready to go. And Gaskin was actually designated last week, but he didn't make it in. He just wasn't ready to go, so it took him an extra week. So, I wonder if there's maybe a little more to it. Is his conditioning a little off still? Is he maybe not 100% healthy, but they're bringing him back simply because there's literally nobody else there, that they have no running backs. So that just takes me off him for cash purposes. I don't like the potential downside that is there to have him in my cash lineup. I think Devontae Booker or David Montgomery are more, I don't want to call them sure things, but I think they're more projectable. I think we can understand what their role is going to be better, and that whether the team is up 20 or down 20, they're going to be on the field. If the Dolphins are up 20, I could see them not using Gaskin as much and maybe giving it a little more to Lair, just because, why risk it when you have nobody healthy in your backfield, and you may have to sign somebody off the street this week simply for depth.
That sounds a lot like what I think is going to happen in Minnesota, by the way. Just throwing that out there as a side note. I feel like even though Madison is out with I think an appendectomy, Cook is still coming off an injury. I think Boone might get some extra touches this week. Big. So I do think, that's a situation. I'm glad you brought up that point in general. I think just you're going to see that with a couple of teams this week. And I do think, there is that worry with the Dolphins as well. Continue with your point. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in because I was thinking about that point the other day.
That's right. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at on it. I mean, if the game is close enough, Gaskin should have the workload to pay off for cash purposes. I'm just not confident in it. Again, just because of the health and the type of matchup that it is. Listen, I could be dead wrong, and Gaskin can have 5 catches, over 100 total yards, and a touchdown by halftime. And it looks silly for not saying I'm comfortable with him in cash, but you gotta draw your lines somewhere. And like I said, I just think Montgomery and Booker are a little bit safer, just because we know that the workload is going to be there.
The thing with Gaskin, and it was a question that was asked this morning in our Slack chat, part of the Bankster DFS membership for $3.99 a week. In the Slack chat, it was asked this morning, what do we do if we had the extra $400? Do we go up from Montgomery to Gaskin? Oh, by the way, Aguda, is my screen showing today?
Yes. Oh, yeah, you're good today.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh, bless us. You see on the screen some actives and inactives. DeAndre Swift is officially inactive. Guy that I had targeted as a potential sleeper, Isaiah Coulter for the Texans, is actually not playing. He's not even active. They said they liked him, and now they didn't activate him. I think that actually says a lot for QT. Makes me much more comfortable with QT. Back to the gas. So if you had the extra $400, so Gaskin or Montgomery? Well, I'm going Montgomery every time in this case. I like Gaskin. He's in my cash game pool. I've moved him into the cash game pool. It's a great matchup, but the offense is going to run a lot slower with Tua in there. There's going to not be a ton of plays, as many plays run. He gets the workload. I mean, when he's played, he's last 3 games he played 16, 18, and 18 carries. He's getting 4 targets every single game. You're not going to play David Montgomery this week at a $400 discount, by the way, against the worst rush defense in the NFL when it comes to fantasy, the most generous team, the Lions. I get it. There's a new coach. There's some excitement in Detroit. I don't know. But there's definitely, the thought that they might play a little more. But you know what? Bad players are still bad players. Bad schemes are still bad schemes. David Montgomery has just as much a volume, or almost as much volume, as Gaskin. Maybe he's on a better offense. I mean, Tua just doesn't excite me. As we said, we took Devontae Parker completely out of our cash game pool. I was all in on Parker with Fitzpatrick, but I just not there with Tua. So maybe the Bears are going to run a better offense. Allen Robinson is healthy. Trubisky plays really well against the Lions. He's the modern day Blake Bortles. He gets his points, but Montgomery gets his Montgomery's going to get his volume anyway, and this is the matchup to use him. And at a $400 discount, there's no scenario in cash where I'm playing Gaskin for Montgomery at a $400 discount for Montgomery. If the prices were flipped, I may consider Gaskin if I needed the $400. but I get $400 and I get the better player. I mean, even Gaskin over someone like Kenyon Drake. I think Kenyon Drake's got more upside than Gaskin. I think Kenyon Drake's a fairly safe play. In cash, I'd use Kenyon Drake above Myles Gaskin, and I'd use Devontae Booker, who looked really good in the limited work he's had this year. No Josh Jacobs. The Jets' rush defense isn't great. Now, I know we're playing the Jets in cash this week, and I know we feel really good about the Jets defense today, but, we have, I don't know, an unhealthy obsession with the Jets here at Bankster. So I think we have to take those Jets-colored goggles off and realize they're just not a great defense. So Booker is I think a better play, again, at the $400 discount than Gaskin. If you play Gaskin, I'm not going to tell you you've made a critical, horrible, worst mistake you could make in your lineup. It's not, in that same price range. It's not playing Duke Johnson with David Johnson coming back and, a good Colts defense. Playing Duke Johnson would be a huge mistake, I believe, this week. Playing David Johnson in cash would be a huge mistake this week. So I'm not going to say you're doing that if you're playing Gaskin, but Gaskin versus Montgomery, I mean, we've been Montgomery all week. I take the $400 discount and play the guy who I think is just in a better position right now. I'm going to run through the chat room and see if there's anything in the chat room. Big Matt's in the chat room, so let's go to the chat box right now. Can't believe I'm asking this. Who's the best Jets wide receiver to pair with Booker in a mini stack? I think for upside, I think either way, it's probably Perryman with a $200 discount. And cash, I'm probably running simply because of the target volume, and Perryman's hasn't been there as consistently. But they are looking down the field just as much, if not more, for Perryman. I think he has the higher upside, and he's $200 cheaper. What say you, Jet fan?
Probably Perryman because of the discount, and also too his ownership is looks like it'll be a little less than what Mims is as well. I mean, it's either or. I don't think there's. To me, they're probably on similar footing anyway, as far as pecking order and what the Jets team, what they're going to look to do.
I always assumed it was a GPP because you were talking about the mini stack, and we don't worry about mini stacks and cash. So yeah, thank you for clarifying. Matt in chat clarifies GPP, but we assume that. Listen. So okay, here's the thing. I know we do this every week at the end of the show. I'm just going to get it out of the way early today. I'm not completely anti-Jet stack today. I think there's an avenue where a Jet stack can work. We say this every week, and we're going to keep doing it until the damn Jets give us a GPP win. But look, Darnold is super cheap. The Raiders defense is not great. They're missing their top safety and Jonathan Abram. You've got a double stack you can run with Mims and Perryman, and you've got a very obvious run back stack. And I would go full run back stack. Listen, we're going to go all in with this stupid game. Let's go all in with this stupid game. You go with Aguilar, and you run Aguilar, you run Waller, and then you still got a bunch of money left over. You run a terrible defense, and we're clearly not going to run the Jets in this instance. You can't run the Jets. And actually, with this kind of a scenario, maybe you can spend up a little bit on defense. So we're not doing so in cash, but in a GPP, I think there's an avenue to run up a little bit on defense with the Seahawks, who I think are a great defense. Well, that gives you room for a 5%, 6% Nick Chubb. Gives you room for one of my favorite plays, and I know one of Guda's favorite plays this week, a 5,700 Jonathan Taylor. And now you've got $9,000 for your flex. I wonder who's sitting at $9,000 with a ton of upside that we can throw on a flex. Hey, look, it's Devontae Adams, who I think is in a rough matchup, but it's a nice little late game hammer there. I don't know. I'm doing this again to myself, Gouda, but this is a GPP we could play. I see you grinning. I don't. I think this might work, but also Doug's an idiot. I don't know how we.
No, this is
good, right?
This is the first week that I've actually made some Jets lineups. I've actually have 3 Jets lineups, and listen, with where they're priced, you can do some fun things. I have on one of my Jets lineups, I'm able to have Dalvin Cook, James Robinson, and Devontae Adams in that lineup. With what you can get elsewhere, it's not the craziest idea. Again, because of what the Raiders defense is, and because the Jets are finally changing it around and throwing it downfield more than just dumping it off to Crowder like they were doing earlier in the season. There's some potential there. And again, with the combined cost of what Darnold, Perryman, and Mims are, you're talking about 13,000, and on that, you're looking for a combined 52 points from those 3 guys to make it worthwhile. it's very reasonable, I feel. And also too, even with the bring back in Aguilar, has been the deep threat, and he's the number one wide receiver. I won't call him number one target because we know that's Waller. But Aguilar is their deep threat. He's been their number one receiver, and we know the Jets can be beat through the air, as we've seen the past couple of weeks. So there's some potential for a little bit of a mini shootout in this game.
I mean, listen, is it realistic? No, but let's say, okay, I'm not going to throw dumb numbers at you. I'm going to throw normal numbers at you. And this is how you can kind of look at a stack, honestly, and talk yourself into the Jets like we do every week. Darnold, 250 and 3 touchdowns. Is that completely unreasonable? I'm not saying 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. 250 and 3. I know for Darnold that's a lot, but that's not like the greatest game that's ever been played. You get Perryman go 6 for 100 with a touchdown, and Mims goes 5 for 50 with a touchdown. None of those are ridiculous, or you flip that, right? None of those are ridiculous numbers. And if you do that, you're looking at 20, 40, 50, 61 points. You're over 4x. Mm-hmm. You're like 4.3x on that. Like, that's, it's doable. It's pretty good. It's not likely, but it's possible. And I'm not saying run out and everyone put a jet stack in, though I know someone who's watching is going to put a stack in, and bless you for it. Good luck with it when you win the millie. Buy me a Coke. Like that's, it's ridiculous. It's fine. It's good. The jet, but this is the kind of thing that you play with. And again, we love to show ways you can play with lineups, opportunities you can build. I'd rather run this stack than a Dolphin stack today. Like, for sure. I would for sure rather run this, especially because the Jets are underdogs at home where teams tend to be a little more plucky. The Dolphins are 10-point favorites at home. They're not going to look to bomb away. They're not going to need to. Tua hasn't thrown more than 30 attempts in a single game in his career. I think the Jets are going to have to. So, and no, Sean, it's not that I'm like anti-Crowder in this respect, but it's saving that extra $1,300 to go from Crowder to Perryman or the $1,100 from Crowder to Mims. I just think the upside's there. And if we're going to get stupid with the Jet stack, might as well go all the way stupid and just fade Crowder too. Crowder's been he hasn't been quite as much of a target hog lately, and I know that a lot of that had to do with Joe Flacco. But even last week, he only had 5 targets, and that's with Darnold back in the lineup in a matchup that they needed to fit. So I'm not down so much, let's say, on Crowder, but if I'm going for the big home run, it's going to be with Mims and Perryman, and then those run backs, which it's a filthy lineup. Filthy, and filthy as that I might need a shower afterwards. Big Matt wants to know, top wide receiver for the Jags, DJ Chark? Yep, I don't think it's close. I think he's the safest. I think he's got the most upside. Because I do look, the one thing the Jaguars do with their I'm going to erase this abomination of a lineup. The one thing the Jaguars do outside of Chark is they tend to spread their targets amongst all their receivers, and none of them are out this week. I don't have an update on Conley, but Johnson, Chenault, Cole, I think they're all playing. Now, Cole has been like a 4 or 5 target a game kind of a guy, but Chark's the guy getting all the targets, no matter who that second receiver is stepping up. Chark's the guy who gets the targets. 8, 5's not great, but that was also a windy game in Green Bay. 8, 12, 7. He doesn't always produce on them. 14, 9. He has a couple of lower games at the beginning of the year, but right now you've got Lennon, who has already said, he said it last week, and it's not changing. He's going to go out and chuck it. What do I have to lose? Team's a 1-win team. They're 10-point dogs on the road. They're going to throw it. Chark has got the upside to blow 5,400 out of the water. And he's more likely to do it than Cole. Like, Cole has shown in the past that he's been okay and he has some upside, but he just isn't getting the same volume as Chark, and he's just not as red zone present as Chark is. Colin Johnson had a nice catch last week, but he only had 3 catches. He had the touchdown, but is that going to happen every week? I mean, if Chark was playing last week, wasn't it likely that Chark was in that? He was playing the same spot. Johnson was playing the same spot where Chark would normally play, so that might have been Chark's reception. He's the guy. Actually, Chark's one of my favorite one-offs this week at 5,400. I just think he's too good for that price and too good of a matchup. The Vikings are just not great against wide receivers. They've given up more points than all but one team to opposing wide receivers this year. This says 28th, but it depends upon kind of what metric you're using. If you look at different sites, they're the 3 or 4 worst teams against opposing receivers. So use those guys and use the best guy, especially if he's cheap. Like if Chark was $7K, I'd probably lead you towards Cole. But at 5,400, he needs, if he has 3 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown, that's 16 points. That's beating his value right there. And if he goes over 100, Now you're talking over 20 points, even on 4 or so catches. 4 for 100 is in a touchdown. 4 for 100 without a touchdown to 17 points. So there's a lot of avenues for Chark to hit value on a team that's going to have to throw. I assume Gouda, by your you seem to be nodding and ahhing. I assume you feel the same way that
and let's not forget. I mean, Glennon is not afraid to air it out. The Jaguars obviously weren't afraid to have Glennon, throw it a bunch last week, and I mean, Glennon is serviceable. He's not a backup that you he's not a backup that you want to play for a DFS lineup, but in real life, type of football, he's arguably one of the better backups in the NFL, especially with some of the play that we've seen across the NFL from other backups. Glennon stacks up a little bit better. So, when you have a serviceable guy and, a bad defense that they do, and Minnesota we know can put up some points, they do have a lot of talent on their offense, it makes sense for Chark. There is multiple paths there.
And Sean chiming in from the peanut gallery. We've been anti-slot, and here he comes in with, hey, how about that? But what if Cole lines up wide? Cole lines up wide quite a bit, doesn't he? And I know Sean does a lot more research on that than I do when it comes to slot wide receivers. But, isn't it more likely that Chark and Cole are going to be the outside guys and Chenault's going to be the slot guy? And yeah,
potentially.
That would just mean Chark. That would just mean Chenault. But, I don't know. I don't think of Cole as your prototypical slot receiver. And, look, Cole's fine. I mean, spending a lot of time in these receivers, but we are Minnesota this week as one of our top stacks, so I do think that it is worth discussing. And then look, 6, 5, 7 catch rate's awful, but what's he done with that? He has one game at 20 here, one game at 20 here, over 20, and then he's and he had a couple good games early in the year, touchdown dependent there. But since week 6, what's he really done? Week 7, since week 7, he's had one game over 7.4 points. Listen, a tournament, if you don't have 5,400, he's worthwhile. He may be my second choice above Chark, but I'm Team Chark. Well, I'm a DJ Chark guy because you can sing the song, DJ Chark. Let's see. Well, I'll spare you all. Let's see what else Big Matt has here in the chat, guys. And if anyone else is listening in the chat, throw your questions in there. That's what moves this along. Otherwise, Gouda and I are just going to talk about the Jets for an hour and a half. So.
No, I won't do that.
We're not. Ertz, that was Debbie Ertz, yes. Not a Razzo. Goddard or Ertz have any value in a GPP today? I will tell you on the single game showdown on FanDuel, I ran both Goddard and Ertz in my lineup, assuming they're both active. I think they are. I don't think Ertz coming back is going to hurt Goddard as much as it's going to hurt some of the outside wide receivers, because I think it'll hurt Jeffrey. I think it'll hurt Fulgham. I think Rager is just not getting the kind of volume I'm looking for. And I think Wentz likes to throw to his tight ends. And if Hurts gets in the game, I think he's going to want to throw to his tight ends. And so I think Goddard and Hurts are both worth playing as a run back. I'm not playing them as a standalone. I'm not going to run them unless I'm running a Packers stack as a run back. But because in that range, I think Gesicki in the slot makes some sense. I do think I know Tua hurts him, but I think Gesicki, the Bengals are just terrible against tight ends. So I do like Gesicki a little bit there. I like Hunter Henry a little bit better. I do like Tunyon and Trey Burton, but if I'm running a Packers stack, then it makes a lot of sense. And Tunyon's not in it. That makes a lot of sense to run back with one of those tight ends. Goody, you got any differing opinions on that?
Not really. I mean, I don't think I know I don't have Ertz in any of my lineups. I don't trust him coming back off of the injury, and I've got Goddard in 2 of my lineups. Actually, as standalone plays, just in that range. Because I do think Goddard has enough value there at his price, and Ertz is definitely not going to hurt Goddard's value. I mean, we've seen even with Ertz out, they've run enough 12 personnel with Richard Rodgers instead. Mm-hmm. So
that's who gets hurt the most by Ertz coming back.
Yeah, so I think really it's going to be the same story that we've seen the past couple of weeks with the Eagles. I don't think this really changes anything that they're looking to do, and they just haven't been very good. I mean, again, at a weak tight end position, Goddard has that upside to do something and to be a nice play at 4,300. But other than that, I mean, I'm not overly excited about either guy. And like I said, I'm not using Ertz anywhere because Ertz looked bad before he got hurt, and coming back off the injury and everything, I just don't know what Ertz maybe even has left in the tank now.
weeks 1 and 2, just talking about hurting Goddard. Weeks 1 and 2, Ertz had 14 targets. Goddard had 17. They 31 times in 2 weeks to their tight ends, so about 15 targets a week. Richard Rodgers is really the guy who gets hurt most, and again, those outside wide receivers. I just don't. I don't have a problem playing either of them. Again, I'd run them more as a run back. Ertz at $300 though. I know he didn't look good prior to him going out, but $3,900 for a guy like Ertz, and maybe Wentz wants to get him more involved because Wentz is trying to save his job. I mean, I could see him as a tournament option. I don't fear playing either of those tight ends today. Let's put it that way. And maybe that helps Miles Sanders too. Maybe a little bit of extra attention to Ertz opens up the middle of the field and makes Miles Sanders a better tournament play. And I'm using him as my top run back in a Green Bay stack. Like, I'll go Sanders before the tight ends just because Green Bay's so bad against the run and they're pretty good against tight ends. But Philly uses their tight ends differently. Philly uses the tight ends in the same way that the Patriots used to run it with Gronk and Hernandez, where they would run them as wide receivers. And so that's a little bit different. And so I'm okay with them, but I'm also not running to use Philly at all today. Like, I'm not in love with the Eagles. But there's going to be Packers stacks out there, and we do want run backs, and so that's where I'm not using the Philly receivers at all this week. I haven't touched them. My run backs are Goddard, Ertz, and Sanders. Not
but I mean, even that there's no reason to trust any of the Philly receivers. I mean, it goes back to what we spoke on Friday night about even considering or trusting Miles Sanders from the cash perspective. The Eagles' offense is just all over the friggin' place. That. Who knows where the production is going to come from, if there even is. If Wentz isn't out there taking 5 sacks and throwing 3 interceptions and barely getting over 200 yards.
Wentz has been sacked three times or more in every game. Like, he is just an absolute mess. I mean,
that's really the problem. I just think too. I mean, I don't know if Philly has given up on him yet, but they're going to have a lot of questions to answer in the offseason with this. And it's hey, maybe Wentz is feeling the pressure, and maybe he's a guy that can step up and make something of it these last couple of weeks, because technically they're in the playoff hunt. They can still win that.
That's the issue.
They can still win that division. So maybe all this pressure and stuff, wakes up Wentz and he finally starts to click again, like we've seen in the past. Or maybe that injury, and then just how many injury, his knee injury, and then how many injuries the Eagles have gone with, and just how banged up and frankly bad their O-line is. Maybe it's just time for a change of scenery to him. I would argue the talent is still there in him, but maybe he just needs to go somewhere else to figure it out. Maybe it's just not working for him, or it's right for him anymore.
They talked about it on the game this past weekend. They talked about the issue with Wentz, and it is that playoff push, right? The NFC East is so bad that, and the team feels that Wentz is the best chance to have them win that division. So clearly they don't think Hurts is going to manage the game and do the things he needs to do. But I think once they're officially out of the playoff hunt, which might not happen until week 17, I think they feel that Wentz is the guy to get in there. I don't agree necessarily. I think if Wentz is playing that bad, I don't know how much anyone listening, or Gouda, if you remember, Rick Ankiel used to be a pitcher for the Cardinals.
Oh, yeah.
Ended up getting the yips. Same thing with Chuck Knobloch, second baseman for the Twins. And
he got
the yips. And once it got in their head that they couldn't get the ball over the plate or throw the ball to first base, it was everywhere. You're a Yankees fan, right? So you definitely know. You're a Mets fan. That's right.
Ankiel got the yips in the 2000 playoffs against the Mets.
He did. And then, Knobloch, same thing, got the yips. When he was playing for the Yankees, and couldn't get to first base, and just they never got it back. Ankiel changed positions. He became a hitter.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Carson is that level of bad, but I saw it on the game this past week. He just looked lost. He looked lost behind the eyes. He looked like he had no confidence, and he wasn't running as much as he should. I know towards the end of the game, when they were in complete desperation mode, they were running their offense. He had no idea what he was doing. And that takes the confidence that I would like to have in the rest of the Philly offense, and it stuffs it in the toilet. Like, I have no confidence in that offense. Who I do have confidence in, Josh Hook, the Hook Monster, joining us for Monster Leverage. Our GP bits, I've been waiting. I've been holding off on our big bits today because Gouda and I have one stack we really want to talk about today, and we've been independently ideas and then randomly going, hey, I think this game's good. But I was holding off in case you have the same one, Hook. We didn't want to steal your ideas. We're so happy to talk about our GPP pivots and leverage plays. How you doing, Hook?
Well, I'm good, guys. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Doing well.
It's Sunday, man. It's Sunday at noon. Like we're there. We're headed towards football. We actually have another week of football, and there's no COVID crazy. What's not to be excited about?
I heard a Mets reference, so I always have to drop 2015. My Royals beating you. Great year for me.
Oh, come on.
Oh man,
come on.
Hey, it's honorable just to be in the series. Good teams go back and win.
Doug, just cut him off, Doug. Cut him off.
Well, it's been nice seeing you, Huck. We'll talk to you later. Seeing as I too grew up a Mets fan, so
where do you guys come from, man? Like you go into New York City and there's not a Mets fan anywhere. And then I come to Bankster and all of you are Mets fans. It's brutal.
It's weird too, because generally when you're from the New York area, and I grew up in Connecticut and lived in Albany, New York for a while. I went to school in New York. I mean, I've been East Coaster my whole life, other than the last 14 years here in Vegas. When you grow up in New York, and Gouda will definitely attest to this, if you're a Jets fan, you're a Mets fan, you're a Nets fan, you're an Islanders fan in general. And then if you're a Knicks fan, you're a Rangers fan, you're a Yankees fan, you're a Giants fan. Well, I guess I'm the weird one. First of all, I couldn't care less about the NBA. But I was always a Bulls fan because I'm a big front runner, and Jordan was just amazing. And I'm not a Bulls fan now, but I was then. I was an Islanders fan. Obviously now I'm a Knights fan. But I was an Islanders fan. I was a Mets fan, but I was a Giants fan. Like I didn't follow that pattern and go with the Jets. Now my brother was a Yankees fan and a Jets fan. It was very weird in our household. Couldn't agree on a single team. It was but you've got a bunch of New York coming at you. So be nice. Be nice to New York.
Weirdly enough, I always liked the Islanders because I have like this weird guilty obsession because my teams were so bad growing up that like I feel to earn fandom for a team from another city, like I have to start when they're crappy. I can't just go root for a good team and go, yeah, that's my team. It's like, no, we're going to be in the rebuild together. We're going to build up and we're going to build our fandom. So
see, other way around. I like the Bulls. I started rooting for the early 90s Blue Jays. I really liked the Seahawks once Russell Wilson showed up, but that was more of a Russell Wilson thing. Like now I'm a mercenary. You get a player I like on a good team, I'm probably gonna root for him. Love those Vince Carter Raptors. Like I'm such a front runner. My brother.
I did like the Bulls. I got goosebumps when they did that Jordan documentary. And they started the intro.
Oh,
with,
so great!
My goodness.
Oh, dude, I was like, "Where's Jordan? I want to watch a game. Let's put him on."
There's no team with a better intro than the Chicago Bulls ever. Like no team comes out more hyped and better with that music, and it just builds up to it, and you're like. And at the end, when the announcer goes, "Michael Jordan," oh my goodness, let's play some basketball.
Oh, it was insane. I loved it.
All right. But let's talk some football right now. So where's our leverage plays at today, Hook? Where are you starting me today?
Okay. I'll just because you guys were just talking about it. Back to that Packers game. I like Rodgers and co. Like I mean, I did about 5 to 7 lineups with them. If we're looking at leverage though, Miles Sanders is tough, but like if he does get volume today, he has an excellent matchup. And for the Packers stack actually to really pay off and hit its ceiling, you need the Eagles to do something. And still, I mean, I have worries about his target or his volume as well, and I don't have him in everything, but he is the most likely to succeed and is probably going to need to have a big game for the Packers to really hit winning GPP upside, in my opinion. For sure. It's not pretty. It's just not pretty, but like, I mean, you need 2 teams to tango. Like I generally like to target game environments I like. And I mean, it's the way it happens. I mean, the Packers give up the second most receiving points to running backs. They're pretty good at stopping the tight end. And I'm not sure Carson Wentz can hit a wide receiver to save his life. So, I mean, it's tough to put any Philadelphia Eagle because I'm a glutton for punishment and watched that whole game last Monday night. That was awful. But, yeah. So, but yeah, I have Sanders in probably about half my Packers stacks today. So.
Where's your Packers exposure on that game? Because I wrote up potentially fading Devontae Adams for both money and coverage purposes. Now, I know Darius Slay got lit up by DK Metcalf last week, but Philadelphia tends to shut down wide receiver ones, though I was reminded by our good friend Topher Smith that haven't really faced a lot of good wide receiver ones, and the one that they did torched them, which was Metcalf. But in general, Philadelphia shut down the wide receiver ones from the other teams. How are you approaching the Devontae Adams $9,000 conundrum?
Yeah, so I kind of went weird because, like, I hate Devontae Adams' price, but I love Aaron Rodgers' price. So right. I have, I thought Aaron Rodgers was actually playable by himself today in case he has one of those Aaron Rodgers spread the field kind of game. Like, this is a weird week where we don't have one of the running guys like Allen or Mahomes is his own thing.
No.
Where I think a running guy is going to take down the number one quarterback. Like we're probably going to have a pocket passer do it. So like Rodgers can put up 28.
Kyler Murray's not running this week. Kyler Murray's not going to run this week either. With this,
we'll talk about that. We'll get there in a minute.
Sounds good.
I just think like I have more MVS and a little bit of Tanyan. I have some Adams, but he's only like 25% of my Aaron Rodgers lineups, just in case he has one of those 45-point days, because it can happen. I mean, if DK Metcalf can go off against Darius Slay, and is Slay playing? But like, I haven't seen the inactive on them. Is he 100% in today?
I'll double check, but I haven't seen him. I'll check while you're talking about the next stack. Am I alone? Am I alone on Allen Lazard Island then this week? Is this Doug and nobody else is on this island? Because I just feel when he plays, MVS takes a step down. I know he's a better deep threat, but like, isn't Lazard the number 2 on this team? What are your thoughts on that?
For me, I don't really like what Lazard ADOT's been the last 2 weeks. I mean, MVS can hit 4x, and like that's what we're trying to do in a tournament in one play. And I mean, the Eagles have been getting beat deep. I mean, they're not good in deep coverage. I mean, they might be able to shut down Adams or limit him, but I have Lazard too and Tanyan. Like all 3 of those guys with the touchdown, they can easily see enough volume to hit 4x. And yes. I think it's like Adams I don't have paired with any other Green Bay receiver. Like it's just too much. Like I generally like to take the salary and multiply it times 4 at the beginning of the week. That's just how I know. So I have an idea of what I need to hit. And there's just realistic and unrealistic numbers. So, I mean, Adams needs at 9,000. I mean, he needs 36 in the tournament. That's a lot, you know. I mean, and that's you got to figure when he catches the ball, he's taking it away from another pass catcher on Green Bay. So it's really hard for 2 of them to explode in that spot at that price number. So, generally, when I like to do that, like, I mean, if I look at like Kupp and Woods today, like at 6K each, like I can easily hit, you know. I mean, that's what 48. I can do that. They've done it before the season as well. So I'm not as worried about it. So, yeah.
So, I guess the way the Packers tend to run is it's either Adams or Rodgers is going to spread it around. So I guess that makes sense. You either run Adams naked with, well, not naked, but just with Rodgers, or you run Rodgers with a couple other non-Adams back catchers. That seems to make a lot of sense. I love it. All right, where are we going next? What game do we got next?
All right, so I'm going to target 2 game environments first that I just like that I think have they're not going to have a lot of ownership and under the radar stealing. First one I like is Atlanta and New Orleans.
That's the game we were holding off on. So
was it? Okay, I was okay. Man, we're starting to think alike, guys. Let's start off.
We really are.
Atlanta's going to throw the ball. They throw the ball like a top 5 rate in the league. Today, the Saints are missing Janoris Jenkins, who's been their best corner. They've also are missing I think it's Davenport. They're Marcus Davenport, pass rusher. If you look at Matt Ryan's stats, like I was interested to see what the comparison is between games where he gets Julio and Ridley versus just one. And Matt Ryan averages about 5 more points a game, about 22.5 when he has them both, which at 22.5, like that's more than enough at $5,600 price tag. And Julio and Ridley are about the cheapest I've seen those two in about 5 years in DFS, man. Julio, I've never seen this cheap, man. And
it's a low price on Julio. We've had a couple of lower price games this year for him, but this is like a new level. Like it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And then like I like bringing it back. You can take Alvin Kamara because at 7K and he'll be less than 5% owned. Like it's kind of a Hail Mary. I haven't got there yet, but I think I need about like 7 of these stacks to get there. But like Michael Thomas, like. If you think the Saints are going to have to pass, and I do, I mean, they're still going to throw it 25 times today. Michael Thomas has been getting about 50% of that target share since Taysom's been taking over. Like, they don't throw the ball deep. They just throw the routes to Thomas. I mean, he's volume. If he gets in the end zone, man, he can easily pay off that $7,000 price tag. And Matt Ryan's going to come in.
He did 2 weeks ago against Atlanta on volume alone. So.
I mean, I like Atlanta defense today, too. Don't get me wrong. Because Atlanta's won 4 of 6. Like they're kind of sneaking their way back into this playoff berth or playoff opportunity. I don't think they've quit yet. And again, I mean,
they've got a lot of talent. They're a very talented team.
Exactly. I mean, and Matt Ryan. I mean, like these NFC South games, they shoot sometimes, man. They just get weird. Like they know each other. Like it can happen. And if you're gonna I've looked at ownership this morning. I've seen Julio and Ridley both under 5%, and I just don't think people are targeting this game. And
That's crazy.
It's insane. Yeah, I mean, I don't have Julio and Ridley in the same lineups. I think one or the other is probably going to have the ceiling game. But I have Matt Ryan, Julio Thomas, Matt Ryan, Ridley Thomas, and then I kind of my other like player box I put in with them. So I'm on all of it. So I won a lot of Matt Ryan today.
It's funny as you're talking about it. I'm literally looking at my lineups going, do I have enough? Do I have enough of this game? How much more money do I need to lose on this game? We love that. It's so funny because
20 minutes. It's going to be fun.
Yesterday I was writing my GPP article and in the Hail Mary, and I literally wrote the words, I'm starting to come around on this game. Gouda brought it up on Friday. I'm starting to come around on this game. I flip over to the Slack chat, and there's a message from Gouda that says, hey, I'm thinking about this New Orleans game. I'm starting to come around on this game. So when you say we're starting to think alike, we're thinking the same words at the same time, in the same phraseology. It's ridiculous. But yeah,
I didn't do it till Friday night either. That's when I started getting on it too. I was like, man, just because again,
no one's on this game.
Yeah, I try and make it simple. I try and target game environments, man. It's too hard to pick in every individual play. So I just want a situation I think is going to succeed, and then maybe throw a button. Hopefully, one of the darts stick, and just
yeah. And I mean, even though it's not a high total game, especially compared to some of the other games, I would argue it's got the highest scoring upside of any of the games this week, because we've seen this game shoot out in the past, and I'd be hard pressed to over the past 5 or so years look at these matchups. The total probably has never been under 50, let alone at 46.
Yeah, agreed. And both these and sometimes I know a lot of people are always afraid to put a defense against their guys, but everyone has this intrinsic idea that a defense is going to allow zero else they're in trouble. Taysom Hill and Matt Ryan can give up short fields. That can happen.
Yeah.
That leads to points, offensive points, and that's what we want. I mean, it is what it is. There's plenty of upside in this game.
Yeah, the single biggest thing I've changed when it comes to defense for me in terms of my mindset, I've always been on the get pressure on backfield. But I used to about the points they're going to allow. I don't worry about that anymore. They can give up 31 and get -4. It doesn't matter, because if they're getting 5 stacks, 3 turnovers, and a touchdown, which again, touchdowns are fluky for defense. Yeah. But if they get that pressure, who cares?
Exactly.
Were you upset last year when you played a defense against Jameis Winston, even though he 30 touchdowns? No, you were not. You were the best stack. We won the stack all the time. Jameis and the opposing team. It worked so often. It was ridiculous. You could almost run that in cash last year. It was so predictable.
Yeah, last week, Carolina, I got on them kind of late in the week. They have a top 7% pressure rate. And I'm like, it's Cousins, and he's going to face pressure. I'm in, and they put up 26, and they allow 48 points. You can win with that. That's fine. You don't care how many points they allow. So, yeah, I just like that game environment.
One of the things I like about this game, too, of all the games that are totaled under 50, this has the most talent on the teams and historical offensive production. It's also got a very close spread. It's not it's a pretty game, so it could be back and forth. And once if the game starts to get into that mode, I just feel like with these offenses, it's more likely to shoot out than Cleveland, Tennessee, which has a higher total. And I love the Cleveland, Tennessee game. I've got shares of that game. I've got a lot of players in that game. But if I'm trying to tell the what's most likely to happen story, the talent on Atlanta, New Orleans, much more likely to shoot out than Cleveland, Tennessee, especially the way their offenses run. They're not going to look to just, necessarily pound the ball. I mean, Sean Payton at his heart still likes to pass the ball, and the Falcons don't like to run ever. So I'm with you on this one. This is slowly becoming probably my second favorite game to stack behind I can't get Minnesota passing game. I think everyone's on Cook, and I think there's so much leverage on the Minnesota passing game. But outside of that, this game is quickly becoming my favorite game to stack.
I have I call them secondary builds. I don't have Cousins today, but I have a ton of Jefferson, Thielen with either Robinson or Chark. I think Chark's going to go really low owned, and I don't think that's smart. I think he's a good play. I think he can beat the talent. I feel like
$400.
What?
He's $5,400, and he's a 10-point road dog with a quarterback that wants to chuck it. And he's their top receiver and a red zone threat. He's so much more talented than $5,400.
Exactly, and people will just flock to Robinson, which Robinson has guaranteed volume, but Jacksonville's plucky and they're in games, I like Chart. I said, I don't have Cousins with any of them, but after I say build my Atlanta stack, I try and go to a Thielen with Sharp or a Jefferson with Sharp. And just because I want correlation there at that level too. Again, just trying to hit things that trying to limit my decisions, like try to get 4 or 5 things right on a lineup instead of 9. Like
that's the way to do it. That's what you do. You want to limit the amount of decisions you make. You want the less things to have to go right to win a GPP. What else you got us for this week?
Next game I think could be a little sneaky, and we're going to Kyler. We're going to the Arizona, the Rams game. So originally I was like, oh, I saw Goff's going to have ownership today, and Kyler's not. But I think Kyler is actually the thing that will make Kupp and Woods better than Goff. Like if Kyler does nothing today, Kupp and Woods probably won't have a good game. But Kyler Murray, he's been injured. I know this, but there's rumors that he's getting better. My general belief on injury news is I want to be a week ahead than a week after we find out. Because if I'm a week ahead, it's going to be way more profitable long run before the masses get on it. Like we looked at Austin Eckler last week when we had him at 8%, he went off, right? People were scared of injury. This week he's going to be the chalkiest running back on the slate from what I've seen. So I'm going to bet I'm big on Kyler Murray. I don't like DeAndre Hopkins because he's going to get Jalen Ramsey. And I just, at his price, that ceiling just isn't there for me. But I either want to pair him with AD Isabella or naked, but I'm also putting Cupps and Woods in every Kyler lineup. I mean, Kyler still can put up 60 yards in a rushing touchdown, and at 4% he can break a slate. So I'm just going to bet on that on a lot of games where I don't really like the passing attacks this week in general, and I like that bet today. I think it's a good bet.
Yeah, I mean,
every week you bring me every week you bring me a play that I wasn't thinking of, and that makes so much sense.
Yeah, Isabella is a nice little option there. 3,200. Larry Fitzgerald is out again. And if Ramsey is shadowing Hopkins, I mean Hopkins will probably still get his just because of the talent that he is, but not on the same scale. And that should open up targets for Isabella and even Kirk. But Isabella at 3,200, that's the alternative. Maybe if you were planning on using Coulter and now that he's inactive, you can switch over to Isabella, or even as a pivot from the much chalkier Kiki Kuti. I mean, it's an idea, and again, with Fitz being inactive, Isabella is going to see more snaps and more targets, and you don't need that much for 3,200. And with the type of speed that Isabella has, he's you get the ball in his hands, he can break one to the house. It's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Well, I mean that's the thing. 3,200. Like he saw, I think 6 targets last week, right? And like the easiest way to attack the Rams is like Ramsey's not going to focus on AD Isabella.
Yeah,
and like he's not like so. Like if I'm getting 6 to 7 targets and that's where I have to focus, I'll take that from a 3,200 guy who can break the field. And I mean, Kuti, like I have him in some stuff. I'm not 100% sold that he's the lock smash of the week or anything. I mean, I like him in cash way more. Because I'm just not going to let him beat me, I think is more of my mindset with that. But, I mean, I think Isabella is a good pivot. I think Amendola's in that crowd too. Both the Jets receivers.
We got quite a few questions today about what's our favorite dart wide receiver play. And I keep going, well, QT's there, but he's not a dart because he's going to be 20, 30% owned. And I don't think people know. I think the general public doesn't know enough to pivot off of ownership from cash to GPP. They don't really differentiate their lineups in that aspect. So what you can do is if you want to differentiate your lineup and you want that similar level of upside, but you don't want to deal with the ownership, you take a GPP lineup and you take QT out and you put Isabella in. Like that is the way to do it, I would say. I mean, right? That's in that similar price point. That it's that's like, oh, maybe you can go up to Mims or Perryman, but it really is Isabella. And I hadn't thought about that prior to just 3 minutes ago because this is what Hook brings us. This is our monster leverage. Is you get that same price point and you're pulling off ownership. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and nothing against the Texans today, right? Like I totally understand their warrant or their ownership, but there is a shot they fail. I mean, Kuti's only had 28 catches the last 2 years. Will Fuller, so many times with an offense, losing a player like Fuller, people are like, oh, next man up. Well, his skill set's not replaceable. They don't have that guy. They don't have a big receiver who could stretch the field like that. Cooks runs a lot of short underneath routes. Kuti runs that too. They don't have a deep threat today. They're going to have a deke and dunk down the field. Indianapolis defense got a lot better by getting Buckner and Autry back this week. And it's a very well secondary. I mean, I'm not personally on Watson at all today. I mean, I don't see the upside in it. Like as a whole, like volume is where you're looking for Cooks and Kuti today. And like I said, I have Cooks and Cash is where I'm at. But and then tournaments, like I have no problem just swapping them for Isabella, none. And like so, if 25% are going to be on Kuti, who is maybe close to bad chalk, I'll take the guy with the same probably around, maybe not as much floor, but like I think equal to better ceiling.
God, I hope Kuti gets 10 points because I have that bad chalk sitting in my cash lineup. God
no,
will.
it's not. Like, he probably will.
I think volume will get there. He can get there on volume. I do think he'll get there.
But like he doesn't. I'm not. I mean, he's just for tournaments though.
I don't care. I don't get offended. Like I know it's Kiki. I know it's not a Devontae Adams. You know what I mean? Like I know it's a rough play. And I do agree with the fact though that I just don't think he's going to hurt you all that much.
Agreed.
Cook's the same way at their prices. They're going to be so highly owned. I just don't think they're going to hurt you if they do poorly. But I agree. And I mean, geez, Gouda brought it up on Friday. He is very anti-Watson. I think that's his number one leverage play of the week is just having 0% Watson. If I read the article correctly, he's 0% Watson this week. Just don't play him.
I only played 4 quarterbacks this week. So, I mean, I played Ryan, Rodgers, Tannehill, and Kyler is where I'm at right now. So
see, I got the same 4 except Cousins over Kyler for my core of quarterbacks. But that's because I've just convinced myself on this Vikings stack. I've convinced myself that Cook is a bad play and the passing game is going to be great and put up 28 points in the first half on 4 touchdowns to Thielen and Jefferson, and I'm going to rake in all the cash. That's where I'm at.
Dude, I have my bet is on the Tennessee. Like once I saw ownership this morning and I saw Nick Chubb was going to be less than 5% owned, I will take a running back against this Tennessee defense, no matter what, out of principle under 5%, especially one who Nick Chubb has in half his game has hit right around 30 points, which is 4x. Tennessee can't stop anybody. There is a way that, I mean, Cleveland can jump out a score and shoot Tennessee to a more passing offense. Like, and you're just making a good field bet if, like, say Tennessee has to come from behind and Cleveland's ahead, and like Chubb's going to be the reason they're ahead. I mean, he's having a sensational year, and people are just ignoring him today. Like, I mean, on any other week when we don't have 13 pieces of good running backs, like Nick Chubb would be 30% owned in cash this week at least.
Yeah, I love Chubb. I love Chubb in the tournament. He's one of my favorite tournament plays outside of outside Jonathan Taylor. Love me some Taylor this week too. He's going to be so low owned, and like I think we were talking about that right before. Which one? I think it was you, Hook. Maybe it was good. It was one of you guys I was talking to before we came on, and how I just got so much Jonathan Taylor in tournaments because I just think he's an amazing play this week.
Yeah, if I have a running back, I mean, if I have a Houston receiver, I have Jonathan Taylor with him. It just like
that was you who was saying it then. Yep, yeah. That's exactly what you were saying before we came live. Is you were like, "Yep, I've got me a lot of Jonathan Taylor today."
The 3 guys I have: Nick Chubb, Taylor, Miles Sanders, and then actually the other receiver I like that's going to be really low on Danny Amendola. He's in that like kind of 3,500 range. I like as a pivot.
So let's see.
If we're playing David Montgomery, he's back today. Best way to attack the Bears defensively is kind of over the middle. Hawkinson, but like, I mean, they're going to be pretty good against Marvin Jones. They're better at like limiting deep throws and whatnot. So they have to keep the ball in front of them. Amendola has, I think, I mean, it's a little risky, but again, he's another one of those guys who can see a lot of volume.
He's a good pivot. He's a good pivot off of QT at this price for a tournament.
And I think there's a lot of volume there too. So, or potentially.
Any last plays that we should be looking at there?
I think that's where I'm at today. Like I said, it's Matt Ryan day. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, Hook. Thank you so much for popping in today. Spend a little extra time with us. I just think I love your segment, and I think it's worth diving into some of these plays. You guys can find Hook's stuff at banksterdfs.com. He's he's in the Slack chat all the time, and just check us out, $3.99 a week, and you get all the Hook you can handle among everything else. And Hook, we'll catch up with you in chat in about 35 minutes. We'll catch up with you in chat. Thank you for popping in, and best of luck today. Let's go
good
Falcons.
Yeah, you too, guys. I'll see you later. Thanks.
Let Hook.
Later.
That segment hit what we wanted to hit there, I think. I mean, we are just we've been got over this Falcons play. And, it's one of the things we talked about, one of our our little run sheet for the day. Where are we getting the leverage for in a GPP? I mean, we pretty much talked about everything else on here. So So it brings us back to where's that leverage at? Where are we getting? And boy, Hook sure hit us up with a lot of replays. That Kyler Murray play makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm really into Robert Woods this week, but in order for Woods to really matter, Murray is going to have to do something.
Yeah. And
that's one of the things I hadn't considered.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of it in one of two ways. I mean, Kenyon Drake has been one of the consideration plays this week, and he's getting more volume. He's getting more of the passing game work. He looks to be the true number one there. Hasn't resulted in that much production as I thought it would in the offseason, but he did relatively well last week against New England. He's got consecutive weeks of 3 or more catches and 4 or more targets, which is very nice. I mean, it gives you a nice floor there if you're getting targets and receptions in that range. He's the goal line back, but also too, when you're looking at that, all right, if we're liking Drake, that probably means Murray doesn't do as well potentially. You get that trade-off. It's rare where you have the quarterbacks and running backs going off in the same week or same game type of thing. And the other thing too, I mean, people are afraid of Murray's shoulder injury and what that potentially could do for him, but the rushing floor there, and Murray is your perfect typical leverage type of tournament play, because we obviously know the upside that he brings, and the price is keeping everybody off. So have some exposure in there, and again, for Robert Woods to do anything, or even Cooper Kupp to do anything, Murray on the other side is going to have to be producing. So that kind of gives you the story there. All right, I think Woods is doing something, maybe I should have exposure to Kyler Murray there. It's similar. I mean, it's only Murray's second year, so maybe in some ways the jury is still out on him. But when you get, every week we talk about, Patrick Mahomes. Why is he so underowned this week? Why is his ownership, under 10%? It doesn't make sense. Well, I think at this point, at least for now, with the way Murray is playing this year, you can kind of lump Murray in the same sort of conversation. If Kyler Murray's under 10%, why is he under 10%? That's some good leverage there. Take advantage of it. And Murray's a guy that you can definitely run naked, because if Hopkins doesn't go off, and the way Hopkins is always priced high, is there any one guy on that team that's really going to have a big breakout game if Murray is going off? Not necessarily, because Murray can go for 100 rushing yards and a touchdown, and then throw for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he's still smashing his value.
The one pushback I'll have on what you just said there, which I agree with 90% of what you said, was why is Patrick Mahomes 10%? Why is Kyler Murray 10%? I think we know why Kyler Murray's under 10% this week, right? It's the shoulder, it's the lack of running from the last week, and it's the fact that the Rams have a really good running defense. But, and here's where I'm going to completely agree with what you're saying, that's what makes him a better tournament play, is we know why we know why, and so does everybody. Like, I totally don't understand why Patrick Mahomes was under 10%, but I was going to take advantage of it. But everyone knows why Kyler Murray's under 10%, and people are not going to take that leverage and take that advantage. I mean, you're going to get Kyler Murray at like 3% today, if that, and it's like, if he goes and does what Kyler Murray does, I mean, we've seen games this year where Kyler Murray has thrown for under 200 yards, and he's putting up over 20 fantasy points. If Kyler Murray gives you 30 fantasy points, let's say he throws for, whatever he does, 200 something yards, rushes for a couple touchdowns, like Hook had said, or not Hook, like Good had said, like dude gets you 30 points. He's a huge upside for you, especially if one of the chalkier quarterbacks falters. If Tennessee runs more and Tannehill doesn't do much, or if Minnesota runs more, or if Green Bay gets shut down offensively, that would be awful. But I mean, all those things could happen. I mean, now you've got Kyler Murray looking really good, and Russell Wilson, who's also really chalky this week, which I'm a little surprised about. Russell Wilson hasn't done much the last 3 weeks, but if he's going to be really, really highly owned, and he does kind of what he's done the 3 weeks against a really good Giants defense, which the Giants are pretty bad against the run, and he's got all his healthy running backs, and I mean, if he gives you 12 to 21 points, Russell Wilson, and 30, and Russell Wilson is 30% or 20% or 30%, and Murray's 3%, you've just scooped the field. You've got a nice little double whammy there. If your guy did really well and the other guy didn't do as well at all, and makes sense. I mean, I'm not using them, but I get why you would. But I just don't play as much GPP. I just don't have as many lineups. Like if I'm putting 150 lineups together, there'll be some Murray. And if he's 3%, Maybe I go 6%. You double the field on him. It's only 6% of your lineups. So you're only running 8 lineups, 9 lineups with him out there. I could do 9 out of 150 lineups with Murray. And I do love the idea of running him naked because he's had games where Hopkins hasn't had great games, and because of that rushing upside. So it makes a lot of sense. And that's why I love having all these different perspectives here at Bankster, because listen, it's impossible for one person to see every angle. It's just, if any site tells you that, if any person tells you that, they're wrong. There's just too much data out there. There's too many different ways to look at things. And that's why this shared knowledge is so important. And that's what we bring you here at Bankster for just under $4 a week. It's amazing stuff. BanksterDFS.com. Let's see. We also have what we touched on this week. Are we doing anything with this Chargers game outside of Eckler and Cash? I don't think so, right? Like that's a great spot.
I've actually got some of Damian Harris in tournaments this week.
That makes sense. Okay.
I'm looking at that game as I'm working on with that game. I'm working the story of that this is going to be Herbert's first holy crap, he looks human kind of game. We haven't really seen like that struggle where he looks like a rookie and he just looks totally lost and all that. And even though the Patriots defense has not been what they were last year or even years past for that matter, there's still some talent there, and it's still Bill Belichick. You look at Belichick versus rookies over his run in New England, and it's just like look at what he did with Peyton Manning in his prime, how he just abused and made Peyton Manning look like he was a backup quarterback. So I think this is the game that Herbert just finally looks human and kind of he comes back to earth a little bit. Not to say that it's going to throw off his season. I think it's just one of those games because he just hasn't had it yet. And if that were to happen, well, you would assume that New England is going to be pretty much in control, and that Damian Harris is going to be the guy. Now, also too, Harris has, now it's a little bit clearer in the backfield because Rex Burkhead is hurt. There's only 3 guys playing. And even Sony Michel is not cutting into that much of the work now.
Because he's terrible.
Yeah, so now you're coming down to the point. All right, it's Harris and James White. That's fine. Even though Harris hasn't gotten the targets, he's actually started to run a little bit more routes as well. So if some of the targets come, now the guy's got even bigger upside. Sure. Because let's face it, he's a poor man's Derrick Henry with how he plays and how he's used. So if he's not getting
really poor man's Derrick Henry.
Yeah, but so
but yeah.
So if the Patriots are leading and kind of controlling the game, it's going to be a Harris day. And if he gets a couple of checkdowns, he's going to get the touchdowns. If there's any goal line carries, last week was
Newton is banged up too. So Newton's they're not going to put Newton in harm's way. I do think that's an advantage for Harris a lot, actually.
Exactly. And then also too, the added flip side to that is, well, let's look at Harris's price at 5,200. Well, now you're in the range of where, Booker and Montgomery that are probably going to be 25 to 30% owned. That gives you a nice little pivot point there to say, all right, maybe a couple lineups. I'm not going to use Montgomery and I'm going to just go to Harris, or not use Booker and go to Harris. And that alone gives you, an advantage. And, if Harris happens to outscore one of those guys, well, now you're in fantastic shape.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think that's definitely a way we can look at that game. And I'm not going out of my way to play this game, but I do think you're absolutely right that there is a little bit that we can do with this game and to give us a potential for Harris to play well. God, I really hope if Herbert struggles, though, I would sure love it if he struggled by just dumping it off to Eckler all game. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. I'm just changing the lineup to go. I have a showdown slate where I'm like, you know what? I think you just talked me into Damian Harris over James White. So I'm gonna was making that pivot based on that because it makes so much sense.
So I do have a question for you because I have no opinion on this guy this week. We haven't spoken about him, but
okay.
But it's David Johnson. So, and the reason I bring this up is because Okay. So
no, let me hear your reasoning because again, I haven't seen every angle on this one, but give me your reasoning on David Johnson.
So, well, not reasoning. Really, the reason for my question is with Coulter being inactive. The number 1, number 2 receivers we know are Cooks and Kuti, But this week, the Texans' number 3 and number 4 receivers are Chad Hansen and Steven Nelson. I have no idea who the hell these guys are, if they were signed off the street or what these guys are. So really, you're looking at in their passing game, they have 3 passing targets now with Cooks, Kuti, and Akins. So
I would argue Fells is in that mix as well.
So
I think, I would say Fells and Akins are the wide receiver 4 when you really think of it. I think they're going to run a lot of 12 personnel. I think you have 2 receivers, 2 tight ends, or 1 receiver, 2 tight ends. I think you're going to run a lot of those 4 guys without a running back. I think they're all in line for targets above David Johnson.
Okay. So you don't see, all right, because that's kind of what I was thinking. That I have no interest in David Johnson because I prefer the other guys in his price range where he happens to be.
Yep.
And the Colts defense getting healthy obviously is a big deal as well. But I just an idea of maybe if you had something that I was missing.
Even in a GPP, looking in that price range within $300, so we'll only go $5,700. I'd rather use Jonathan Taylor. I'd rather use Kenyon Drake. I'd rather use Wayne Gallman. I'd rather use Booker. I'd rather use Montgomery. I'm a little iffy on Kareem Hunt. I'd rather use going down Damian Harris. You've talked me into him. So just in that price point, I'd rather use Frank Gore, I think. I don't love David Johnson. I also think that Duke Johnson has earned the right to continue getting passing game work. So I just don't, is an accomplished pass catcher. They haven't used him that way in Houston, really. And I think he might get some goal line work, but Deshaun Watson is just as likely to run it in. The rushing defense for the Colts is really good with Buckner back. Listen, we know how things go on this live stream. I crap on a player, 3 touchdowns are coming in. So it's, you might just want to use them for anti-Doug purposes, but I have 0 David Johnson. I have 0 interest in Johnson. You've talked to me a little bit off Houston in general. I do think having one of their pass catchers is useful, particularly in cash, particularly if you're using Jonathan Taylor as a run back, Cooks and QT Akins. They're all fine for me. I probably wouldn't use Fells, but that's kind of where I'm limiting my exposure to this team is the 2 wide receivers and Akins. I just think there are way too many other choices at that price point for David Johnson to be anything viable. And I know people can go, well, that means he'll be low owned and yada, yada, yada. Fair. But there's 6 guys, 7 guys. Pick someone else. They're not all going to be 30%.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too. Sometimes guys are low owned because they're just not a good play.
or playing because you know that Doug is a curse. So, again, I'll always go back to Claypool and Fulgham. I crapped all over him, said, why would anyone ever play these guys? And they both had monster weeks. But realistically, I'll never change that side of me because the data says what the data says, and nobody hits 100% of the time, right? If we hit 60% of the time, that's the best people in the industry. Matthew Berry, shout out to Matthew Berry and his recovery from COVID, by the way. But Matthew Berry doesn't hit 100% of the time. He hits 55, 60% of the time. But Brad Evans hits 55, 60% of the time. Pat Mayo, Al Zeidenfeld, Jeff Mance, they all hit 50 to 60% of the time of their picks, but they're able to put together their lineups. They make a ton of money, and they're really good at the game. Whereas, they're hitting 62% of the time, and the average player is hitting 50% or 40%. That's a huge advantage. No one hits 100% of their plays. And so I'm willing to lose on David Johnson. Let's put it that way. That's really the better way to put it. I'm willing to lose because there are other options at that point, and there's no data that tells me he's going to do anything in this game. And I'm willing to be wrong. And if I am wrong, it's not going to hurt me because he's going to have no ownership. He's not going to be one of those, well, he's at 13 or 15%, and you had to have him to win a GPP. I don't see that. I don't see that being a scenario because even at 3% or 1%, whatever he's going to be at, he's not going to be configured in a way that if he's having that great of a game, I just don't think he's going to be configured in a way that he's a GPP winning type of play. So I just don't have him in my pool. I just see no scenario where I'd have 0. I have him the same amount as you have Deshaun Watson, and it's not there. I just can't do it. So yeah, the one player we didn't talk about during this stream we talked this week is Jonathan Taylor in that same game. I've heard reports that Taylor could be under 5% this week. I don't know why. I get that the Colts like to use a 3-headed monster, and we've been burned by Taylor, but he's $5,700, which, I'm looking at his price point. The last time he was that cheap was week 2. And so maybe his freshman year of college, he might have been cheaper when no one knew who he was. But, this is as cheap as you're going to get him. And Houston's given up the most rush yards in the NFL per game, over 140 rush yards per game. if Taylor continues to get the volume he was getting prior to being on the COVID list last week, and the reports are out. He did not have COVID. He was a close contact, so there should be no issue with his health. 22 carries is a lot, but if he gets 18 to 20 carries, if he gets 3 to 6 targets against this Houston defense, he's got a real good shot on volume alone to get you to 3x. But he goes 20 carries, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's what, 25 points, and then he gets 3 catches for 30 yards or 3 catches for 20 yards. Now you're talking 30 points. He's got 5x potential this week. At a low ownership against this defense, like, matchups matter. I did my cash game video last night. My cash game strategy, and one of my guidelines is matchups matter. Well, that's the same for a GPP. Like, I'm not going to play Jonathan Taylor against Tampa Bay in this spot. I'm playing him against Houston because Houston's terrible against the run. And even after the coaching change to Romeo Crennel, they've been terrible against the run. This isn't even like a Montgomery versus the Lions situation where the Lions are worse from a fantasy perspective. They're the only worse team than Houston. And where maybe the Lions play differently under new coaching. We know how the Texans are playing. So Jonathan Taylor, if he gets that run, is going to be great in a tournament. I can't put him in cash because of what we said, the reason people are shied off him in a tournament. Hines and Wilkins do get looks. Houston's also really bad against tight ends, so Burton's going to get looks. They run Brissett a lot at the goal line, but I don't think Brissett's getting those carries as much as Jonathan Taylor's in the game. I just don't see that happening as much. You didn't see it happen.
Yeah, I think that was more fluky last week because Hines and Wilkins didn't run very well last week, and even to that extent, Hines had 18 touches last week and Wilkins had 9 touches. So I even think that maybe they're starting to even go more towards one guy kind of leading the way and mixing the other guys in on third downs or just for a breather type of thing. Well,
slider builds. They're just not. Have you seen Jonathan Taylor? He's like the DK Metcalf of running backs. The guy is yoked, man. He's a rock.
He is. And also too, if you look at it just from a more logical standpoint, you kind of think of it as every week, one of the first things that I would say anybody looks at, I know I do. All right, who are the Texans playing this week? What running back are we using?
Who are the Texans? Who are the Lions playing? Yep.
Exactly. So every week, everybody's using whoever's playing against the Texans. Now, all of a sudden, nobody wants to use Jonathan Taylor, maybe because he was on the COVID list, so people are suspecting that he won't be 100%, but he didn't test positive. He was just a close contact, and it happened to come out the day before the game last week, so he couldn't play.
There's so much hate for Taylor too because they're starting to compare him to Trent Richardson because he can't see the holes. He doesn't know where to go. Like, Jonathan Taylor's a good running back. He has excellent vision. Like, he's a great athlete. He's a rookie. He's learning blocking teams. They didn't have much of a training camp. They had no preseason there. You don't think with him being out last week that he doesn't hear that criticism and he's not studying up that playbook and paying attention to where he's made mistakes. And Brandon's not wrong. Blame Rathbun. Their running backs coach, I believe it's a running backs coach, Tom Rathbun, former 49er. Like, people have been giving him a hard time doing it with Taylor. Like, Taylor definitely spent this week. I'm going to guess he spent this week trying to figure out ways to shut his critics up. And I think Indianapolis is going to look to slow down the Houston passing game because Houston we know isn't running. And how are they going to do that? They're going to control the clock. They're going to feed Taylor. And we've seen games with 15, 17 touches in the first half. I think they're just going to pound the ball with Taylor. He's now well rested for a week with another week of rest without playing last week. He got like a little bye. And him not being sick, like, I can't do him in cash. I get the reasons we can't use him in cash, but I've got him. When I was putting in my lineup generator, and again, I set the pools. I'm, just throwing out 150 lineups. I set him at, I think I have him at like 40% is minimum exposure up to 70%. I was willing to go 70% on 150 lineups on Jonathan Taylor because he brings you that much leverage. Yeah, and the generator doesn't listen all the time, so I get 30%. But I know if I set those numbers high, that they'll give me 30, 40%. Like, I have a problem with 40% Taylor, and that's it with him being expected to be under 5% owned. I'm going to murder the field on percentage owned on Jonathan Taylor this week. And if he busts out, if he is a bust, well, in a tournament that happen from time to time, we're looking to win all the money. We're not looking to min cash. Like, that's why I'm not using him in cash games. If he flames out in a cash game, I'm screwed. In a tournament, I want all the money, or I'd like some of the money, but I'm not playing just to min cash. Like I'm not playing to not lose. I'm playing to win. And Jonathan Taylor is the type of guy who can win me a tournament. So I'm using him very heavily. Same thing with the Nick Chubb, and same thing with players of that ilk. Miles Sanders not quite as highly owned, but I mean those are the guys that I'm gonna hang my hat on that are gonna be low owned who can bust slate. So that's what we're doing. Big Matt wants to know, is Jonathan Taylor the slate breaker today? There's not an obvious slate breaker to me like there was with Tyreek Hill a few weeks back, who ended up not breaking the slate, Justin Jefferson type. I think Jefferson will carry ownership. I do think the Falcons passing game could be slate breaking. I think Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb at the running back position can be slate breaking. And by slate breaking, we're talking a low on play that beats the number. Like yes. Dalvin Cook's going to be really highly owned. Dalvin Cook can break a slate, but he doesn't break the slate. Everyone's expecting him to do well. I'm hoping to break the slate by fading Dalvin Cook. Guda's hoping to break the slate by fading Deshaun Watson. So sometimes it's almost a reverse breaking of the slate. For me, the wide receiver that I'm looking at for slate breaking purposes is DJ Chark. I think he's going to be that way under owned, and I just love him. I love DJ Chark. I think one of the Jets wide receivers, Brashad Perriman could be that guy. God, we talk too much Jets. It's after 9. It's after it's after 12:45 when we're talking Jets again. Do you have any slate breakers? And then we'll wrap this bad boy up, because once we get into Jetsville, it's time to wrap it. It's time to wrap things up.
I think in our running back that's being a little overlooked, that could be, I think, Chris Carson.
See, I was predicting Aaron Jones. I was loading up Aaron Jones. Chris Carson, his usage last week was so his usage was so infuriating last week.
I think that I think they just like I said Friday, I think they were just slowing him back into it more than anything else, because I mean Carson's been pretty injury prone over his career because of his running style and how he is. He's a guy that just gets banged up. Well, I think Carson has that potential, just because I don't think the Giants will score many points, and it could just be a grinded out type of game. So Carson's, sort of that guy that's going a little overlooked. And also too, I
like Carson, by the way. I just did the usage scares me, but I like it.
I do also believe, as funny as it may sound, when people are looking at on DraftKings and looking at lineups, if you look at where Carson is, if you look at all the red that's around him, like you've got, Madison and Gibson and Swift and Connor, guys that are all out, I just think it's one of those mental things, as silly as it sounds, that when people are looking, they just pass it over because they see all the red. So they just look at it and they're like, there's just red there. So there's nobody there that's viable, so I'm just going to keep going down. And then you get into the under 5,000 plays, and that's where everybody is living this week. So you kind of get Carson like stuck in that middle where nobody's looking at that price and nobody's looking at any of the other players around him. So people just overlook him just because.
And I would say, too, at that price point, I think a lot of people are looking at Miles Sanders in a GPP. So I think you're right. Carson's a guy I identified last Sunday when I went through my, before the prices come out, looking at the next week. And then I watched him play, and I was like, I got to pull him from cash at least. And then I just totally forgot about him for tournaments, and forgot about him in terms of, like, I didn't forget about him. I was worried about the usage. But you're right. If Carson goes out and does what Carson does, 20 carries, 4 catches, 4 catches, 2 touchdowns, Carson could be a slate-breaking kind of guy. So I think that's pretty comprehensive list of where we're at. So I think that's a great place to end where we're at, guys. So again, folks, you can find us here, banksterdfs.com. Again, $3.99 a week covers everything, all the sports. We have all the pro sports, all the college sports, the niche sports. Again, I just want to shout out some of the guys doing some of those niche sports, because you see a lot of us doing the big sports, the baseball, the football, the basketball, and the hockey. But I mean, we've got Tay Wagner doing MMA, Brandon Matthews doing EuroLeague and college basketball, and Troy Rapson doing college football, Jeff Kaminsky, the reigning, defending, undisputed FSWA current soccer writer of the year, doing English Premier League and Champions League and Bundesliga. You've got Brian Crozier and Justin Amy doing PGA. And then NBA does come back Friday. We have preseason NBA. I'm sure the team's going to be on it in Slack chat. I don't know if we'll have articles for preseason, but I know we're going to be talking about it in Slack. I mean, listen, if we're talking league in Slack, I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking preseason NBA. And guys, we're only 2 weeks away from the NBA season tipping off. We're going to be doing wall-to-wall coverage on that, articles, pools, Slack chat. All of it's included for $3.99 a week. If you're looking for me or Gouda and you're not in our Slack chat, which you should be for under $4 a week, and that covers, again, articles, pools, everything. But if not, come find us on Twitter. Gouda's at the big time at Bankster17. You can find Hook at Hook Monsta, Monsta, Hook Monsta. And again, folks, we're here live every single Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, getting you ready for the NFL week and then bringing you up to lock Sunday mornings, 11:30 a.m. For Michael Gudadero, I am Doug Shane, BanksterDFS.com. Best of luck. Can't wait to see those Can't wait to see those green screens this week.